Giving folks a minute or two to arrive. I'm glad you're here. And just take a moment to let us know where you're calling in from, what retreat center you're connected to, where is it located, what Indigenous territory are you finding your way here today. Nice to see you, Judy and Suzanne. Thanks for joining. We got Becky. Good afternoon, Becky. Welcome. I see Arlene and Kirsten and Cheryl as well. Lots of good friends signing in. There's a cue in the chat just to let us know where you are, what retreat center you're connected to, and what Indigenous territory you might be calling in from, if you know. If not, it's a great opportunity to take some time to look it up and figure it out. It's a really good practice for all of us. Welcome, Tatiana, Kate. We're just allowing folks to find their way here. Hi, Tatiana. Your hair looks amazing, as always, and you look amazing. Everybody's hair looks great. I should have said that to everybody. Um, you just all look beautiful. Pam, you look great. Everybody looks great. Um, all right. We're going to have a few more folks finding their way here, and Pam's going to let folks in as we just kind of ground ourselves and get ourselves ready to get started. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Michael. I'm the network manager for the Retreat Center collaboration, and I'm delighted that you've all found yourself here today for the season's wrapping up this last call with Lon, who I'm going to introduce here in a moment. And I'm also just wanting to recognize Pam, who's fanning herself. And we're glad you're here, Pam. Pam is our coordinator, keeps Peter and I going and on track, and we really appreciate you. And I'm glad you're here today with us. So before I introduce Lon and we kick off this call, I'm just going to invite folks to find their way here. We'll just spend a minute or two just grounding ourselves into this space. So I just invite you to just take your fingers off that keyboard or your phone or your pencil or whatever you're holding. And just set it all down for a minute. It'll all be there again in a minute. And just find your body in a chair or standing perhaps, and know that you are supported beneath the building you are in by the sacred earth that provides all that we need and that holds us firm. And I just invite you to take a couple of nice deep breaths in, a collective deep breath in and out. Breathe in the goodness and exhale what you don't need to carry. Just taking a minute to open your hands, maybe wiggle your fingers, and just be open to receiving what you need to receive during this time together as a circle. Just pay attention to the part of your body that might need a little extra love and just pull some energy from this circle to that spot. Maybe place your hand there and know that we hold one another. And you're welcome to open your eyes again and just look around the room at all these beautiful people who have found their way here today. We know that there's others that are going to join us, and we'll welcome them with openness and kindness as they come. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Lon, and I have a little bio here about Lon. So for the last nearly 30 years, Lon has been helping leaders in their organizations transform for a vibrant future. And I know that's true because Lon and I have been chatting over the last 6 months about this call and many other things, and he is a vibrant fellow, and I'm delighted to have met him. He's the former CEO of Design Group International, which is a human and organizational development company founded in 2000. And he recently launched A Cause Greater, which is his solo process consulting practice focused on helping nonprofit organizations and their leaders. He specializes in culture change, human-centered governance, organizational visioning, fundraising, and coaching leaders. Lon is also a board member of the Hermitage, which is located just outside of Three Rivers, Michigan. It's actually a neighbor of Gilchrist, and we have Kirsten, who is the director there, on the call today. Lon is married to Sandy, and together they have two grown and married children. So, to help us unplug from the world we find ourselves in, Lon hand turns fountain and rollerball pens on a lathe from a sustainably sourced woods. That is so cool. And you can often find him and his pens at art markets throughout Michigan, seeking to bring back handwriting notes and letters to friends and loved ones, one person at a time. Oh my gosh, I love that. Little side note, during the pandemic, I wrote a handwritten card every day to different people just to keep myself going. And I know a few of you got those cards. So, Lon, I can't wait to buy one of your pens one day. And I'm so excited that you're here with us today to chat and lead us in this amazing call. And we're thankful for the gift that you're offering to us. And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. It's great to be with you. It's great to be here and to be present with you and just to be thinking about the whole idea of governance from a kind of a different frame. And just really excited to be able to walk to walk this concept kind of through you, with you, alongside you. I would much rather be listening to all of you than to kind of be presenting. And we're spending time kind of throughout this whole conversation, three distinct places where we're all going to be breaking into small groups. And so in the back of your mind, be thinking about a recent board meeting. Maybe it went really, really well, but it could have gone just a little bit better. Maybe it kind of went wah wah, and you're like, I wonder what it could have done, what we could have done differently to have it go really well. Um, so many times we get caught in thinking about governance as a model. Like, hey, we have a traditional governance model. We follow Robert's Rules of Order, or we have a this kind of model of governance or that kind of model of governance. And we don't often stop to think about, well, actually, how do we behave in that environment? Like, what's my human behavior that I want to model so that we can have some kind of sense of human-centered governance? And so right out of the gate, I wanted to honor kind of where some of these underlying concepts came from in the development of the concept of humble boards. And I've listed them here. Some of them you may recognize, some of them you may not. Ed and Peter Shine, kind of wonderful authors around the concept of helping and the complexity of helping. They did a lot of work in organizational culture. Amy Edmondson, her significant work in her several books now. The one in particular we're using today is from her book, The Fearless Organization. Mark Vincent wrote extensively on the concept of listening, which we're going to go into because each of the healthy behaviors of being a humble board is paired with a listening competency, so a very specific form of listening. And then, of course, Brene Brown in her kind of how do we have brave conversations? How do we speak directly? How do we care for each other while we speak directly? And kind of how do we create this open environment where it's okay to talk about the hard thing? Um, and so, a little bit of the context for why I talk about humble board. And we kind of explored that already in thinking about not so much following the letter of the law, what we have, which is important, don't get me wrong, but also how do we behave in this space? And we don't have these ways of being together very well modeled for us in today's society. We have lots of arguing, lots of fighting, lots of people coming at each other. But so if we were to open it up in a little bit different way, if we were to think about governance in a little bit different of a way, what would it look like if we entered governance kind of in a very different framework? And so hopefully you see right out of the gate, the humble board concept is built around a generative metaphor, and that is a honeycomb. Six competencies, the words outside of the honeycomb, are the behaviors that we're going to be exploring today. But inside the honeycomb are these three kind of core human skills. The first skill is one of humility. So many times, and I'm sure you've been in board meetings, and I have been in board meetings where somebody's trying to get their point across and they have content expertise and they're saying, hey, I really believe we need to go in this direction and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And it's less about humility and more about them trying to get their point across. And it's really hard to listen when that's the case, but yet we want to listen, we want to understand. And so if we could learn how to listen a little bit better, be more present in our listening, we actually can exhibit the third skill that's here, and that is curiosity. How do we remain curious in a group of people and in an organization we care deeply about? How do we remain curious about what's really going on? And so you have this generative metaphor that we're going to be using, the six-sided hexagon here of a honeycomb, and then these three kind of underlying behaviors right in the middle there. Now, one of the things that we will be thinking about later is around this idea of caring for the whole. And so you have here in this next image, each of the six competencies surrounded by a listening skill. So for instance, humble inquiry, a skill that we'll talk about first, goes right in how do I actively listen? How do I do that? So these behaviors are connected to listening skills. And how do we develop being able to contextually listen in our efforts to evolve culture? So these six healthy behaviors, humble inquiry, situational humility, building whole person relationships, co-creating help, learning together, and evolving culture are each paired with a listening skill. So I know that this is right kind of new and it feels perhaps even there's a lot of words here on this image, but I'm wondering what's coming up for you as you see the Humble Board's honeycomb. What comes up?
I can speak for a second.
Yeah, thanks, Tatiana.
For me, sure, to move this along. Just the part that it's a honeycomb, I found very visually and like mentally pleasing because it's like it makes a whole. So I also realized from the honeycomb analogy in my mind, it's like all of these little pieces make a bigger picture. And this is just a fractal
Yeah,
and it's a fractal. And so literally, like as I'm reading this words, sure, there's a lot of it. And I'm like, and my mind can go into like, wait, what's conceptually, what architecturally, what's the difference of listening? But then as you asked that question, I just stepped back and I thought, okay, what am I actually like noticing? And it was the honeycomb analogy and the visual representation without getting into all those words that I can like ask a bunch of questions about each one,
yeah,
or get into. So yeah, thank you.
yeah, thanks. It really recognizes the six-sided nature and the interconnectedness between having a whole person relationship and our ability to be situational humble and these are connected, right? They're not isolated skills, they're interconnected skills. Thank you.
This is Cheryl. I'm reminded of some of the principles of governing by consensus, where
Mm,
you go in and the idea is you're not trying to, get enough votes to get your way. The idea behind it is to bring everybody to a point of understanding. So
yeah,
understanding why so if someone disagrees, it's not just, oh, well, they're just one person, we don't have to worry about them. You're trying
right.
to understand, well, what is it that is making them not comfortable with this. And so going into and that humble inquiry, that evolving cult, like all of these things, learning together, sort of
Yeah,
that idea of, and we might still have different ideas, but we're but we're trying to at least get to the point where we understand why somebody thinks this
Right.
is the way and why someone thinks that's the way, and then figure out, okay, well, which way are we going to try first? Yeah.
Yeah. You're picking up there, Cheryl, on how these skills can be used in kind of any way of governing, whether it's consensus, whether it's some other form. These are wonderful behaviors that can help get towards those outcomes. Um, let's go towards the first healthy behavior here, um, of being a humble board. And that's the one of humble inquiry. So what is humble inquiry, and how does active listening actually help us? So we're going to go through two of these behaviors, and the corresponding listening skill, and then we're going to break into groups, and kind of reflect on, hey, how are these two behaviors and the two listening skills, how would have they been helpful to you in that kind of story that's going through your head, and you might even be developing it now. So Ed and Peter Schein came up with the concept of humble inquiry. So it's not mine, it's theirs. They use the language of an art and an attitude. So humble inquiry is the art of asking genuine questions, of drawing somebody out. Hey, can you tell me more about what you mean by insert word here? So this idea of humble inquiry honors the fact that I really don't know what it is you're talking about until I pose a question. If I think I do, I'm probably going to be wrong. So let's ask another question so that I have clarity on what it is you're really trying to communicate. It's also an attitude. It's an attitude of revealing a little bit about yourself. Hey man, when that budget line came across and I saw the red, man, I was worried too, because you remember what happened 2 years ago, right? So I'm bringing something out of myself in this conversation so that I'm revealing and creating a container, a psychologically safe container where it's okay to share that kind of level of information. So humble inquiry is this art and it's an attitude. It's paired with active listening. And you see this picture here, the opposite of active listening, of turning our backs to each other. But so many times we do that in a board meeting. I mean, I might cross my legs and you're over here, but I'm actually looking that direction. And so I actively listen with my eyes when I'm looking at you, not looking down at the ground or posing a question when I'm looking at my agenda. I'm actually looking at you. My body, active listening is full body listening. My body is going towards you. My body is present with you in this moment so that I can fully receive what it is you're wanting to communicate. The impact on culture then around the boardroom is that it fosters curiosity in the sense of continuous learning, which helps us be more effective and ethical in our governance. You'll notice the word efficient isn't here in that language. So many times we think about, okay, hey, we got 5 minutes left on the agenda. We better go really, really quickly to make sure we get all that everything done. Humble inquiry and active listening say, hey, wait a minute. We'll get to the agenda when we get to it. We don't have to rush. We value relationship more than we value getting through the agenda. So the second behavior here is a little bit like the first one. It's this concept of situational humility paired with something called conceptual listening, which we'll talk about. So situational humility isn't asking ourselves, do I want to be humble in this particular situation? Situational humility is looking at, hey, there's something happening here that I'm not fully aware of. So I have to accept there's something happening here that I'm uncertain about. And if I remain curious about what's actually happening, the reality of the situation, others might observe something and they might know something that reveals a blind spot that I have or an unconscious bias. So situational humility allows us to be fully present and acknowledge that we might not know what's actually happening. Now that's really hard because I learned, hey, well, if you don't know, fake it till you make it, right? So let's just act like I know what I'm talking about. Let's just say it with gusto and it's going to be okay. But situational humility In practice means that we acknowledge the complexity and we welcome multiple perspectives without being defensive. One of the best questions, can you tell me more? It's actually a statement. It's not really a question, but it couched in that way is so helpful. Now, what's contextual listening? Contextual listening is seeking to listen so that I understand, so that you understand the word choice, the emotion, where that person is at as they're sharing it. What's kind of going around conceptually in their mind? What are they trying to communicate with their words beyond just the facts and the data? Because I might use a word that means something different to me than it means to you. And so if I can share it, well, here's what I mean by that. Now I'm able to have a deeper window into who that person is and what they're trying to communicate. The benefit, obviously, here, I shouldn't say obviously, the benefit here is around being able to be a little bit more wise and grounded in, and you shared it before, this idea of a shared understanding. So that's what we mean by that here. Okay, now I get it. I recognize the complexity of it. I understand that it's actually not a simple concept that we're trying to go here at the board meeting when we're thinking about the new building or we're thinking about the reno and how much can we really raise? Why, gee, I wish we could raise more. Oh man, that's a lot more complex than I thought. So situational humility is kind of paired here with conceptual listening. Any quick questions before we go into our first breakout? If there's a question about a definition or a phrase here, and then we'll go into our first breakout for about 10 minutes. Cool. Sounds like everybody's right, getting it, taking it all in. I really respect that. Thank you for that. But please, if there is a question, feel free to raise it. I can't see everybody anymore, so that's okay. Well, why don't we get into our breakouts? And I think we're going to do triads. So I think the instruction there, Michael, that you and I talked about, is just a brief introduce yourself and then share a little bit about the story that you kind of came to your mind, and hold that container with each other to kind of go through and think about how humble inquiry and situational humility paired with active listening and conceptual listening could have been helpful in that environment that you found yourself in. And then we'll come back in about 10 minutes. Well, I really appreciate how all of you, and welcome to the new people that just came in. I think there was a couple of people that joined in, so welcome to the conversation. I really appreciate how my group went towards complexity. I mean, went towards the complexity inside the boardroom. And they reminded me when we think about humble boards, it's everybody in that room. So having these attributes, having these healthy behaviors isn't just like a board member thing and the staff don't need to worry about it, right? When we're in that role, when we're in that room, we have a governance responsibility, whether you're paid staff or volunteer staff or paid board members or volunteer board members. These are the things that are helpful for you. We maybe have maybe if there's one person who would like, hey, let's have a large group reflection of something that came out of your group that you think would be germane. Maybe if there's time for one person, maybe to bring a thought forward.
I was in breakout group 3, and well, one of the things that we spend a lot of time reflecting on is like how imposter syndrome can show up in these board meeting spaces, and And also like how that relates to a particular set of expectations, whether they're internal or external,
Mm.
about how one is supposed to show up to these spaces. And so that led to a conversation about authenticity in board spaces and conversations, and how these listening concepts and humble board concepts relate to that, where we can be curious about how each person is showing up, where they're coming from, what their history and context is, what their relationship is to the organization, but also to things that are being discussed in boardrooms. And then also how to, a question emerged about how we hold these two truths, like the importance of process, which is, I think, what we're talking about here, allowing each person to show up authentically and to engage and participate, so that we arrive at a fuller and more complete space than we would if things were just, fully run on, okay, here's our agenda, here's our timeline, et cetera. But also holding that there are moments where organizationally it actually is important to arrive at a decision on a particular issue, so that staff can then carry that issue forward. And it might be, and there might be external forces that are sort of forcing that. So it's interesting to hold that tension between these two things that aren't necessarily mutually exclusive, but sometimes there can be a little bit of there is some time sensitivity to a
Yeah.
particular question or issue.
Yeah. Alexander's fantastic reflection there, because you're bringing up even inside of relationships that we've known for a while, how fragility can come into there, right? How, hey, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I kind of want to are they really aware of how they're coming across? But how do I say something? How do I pose a question without kind of having something blow up? Um, Fantastic reflection, which really you kind of set up really, really well. Healthy behavior number three, building whole person to whole person relationship. So, Alexander, I'll just use you and I as an example. So it's like all of Lon and all of Alexander in relationship with each other. So I'm not keeping a part of me over there, right? I'm saying, hey, I wanna have what Ed and Peter Schein call level 2.5 relationship, a professionally appropriate, intimate relationship where we can speak openly, honestly to each other, where there's psychological safety here, where I'm like, man, that's a real big challenge for you. I hear that because I have the same kind of challenge over here when I do blah, 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 blah. And so, this idea of building whole person relationships inside of the boardroom pushes back against transaction. I'm showing up 15 minutes late. I got to leave 15 minutes early, but for the half an hour I'm here, you got me 100%, right? That's kind of transactional. Not being fully present, having read and absorbed the agenda, knowing, familiarizing myself with all the documents, or showing up unprepared moves towards transaction versus, hey, how can I honor the fact that I just had something happen? I'm not prepared. I want to let people know. I want to be quieter tonight because I am not as prepared. If there's something relevant, then I'll bring it forward. See how those two kind of juxtaposition. So that's going to nurture this idea of a whole person relationship with each of our board members and with our staff, is going to nurture this psychologically safe space where I can just say what I just did and it's okay because we're human. And if I didn't center it on the fact that we're humans, we're going to center it on something else, like what I should be doing or coulda, woulda, right? That kind of false sense of reality. And this allows us to take risks, to be okay with a risk or being okay with a failure because we know it's going to learn, that we're going to learn as a board. Hey, yeah, we did that a while back. This is what happened. So let's learn from that. Now, comprehensive listening is ensuring that the other person is seen and understood so that I have what's called comprehensive comprehension of what it is they're trying to communicate. So here, I'm going to be listening, oh, almost like what's going on underneath. I wonder why he's late. I wonder if something happened. It's been the second or third time now that that's happened. I wonder what else is going on. I wonder what question I could pose. that could help me have comprehensive comprehension. In our breakout room, somebody used the language of the through the eye of a needle. And I'm like, I wonder what through the eye of the needle meant. So if I can comprehensively understand what they meant by through the eye of the needle, oh, that's what you mean. So we're going for that kind of understanding. So when we hear back from them, let me repeat back what I just heard. I couldn't have said it any better than myself. So we're looking for that kind of reflection back from the person that we're listening to. The benefits, obviously, here, again, I said the word obvious again. That's too bad. The benefits here are this idea of honest dialogue, shared responsibility. I am as much about having a whole person relationship with Judy as Judy is with me. Now, if I keep a wall up here and she doesn't have a wall, what can I do to let my wall down? So it's a mutual shared responsibility, and it's vital, um, because it's not always going to be, unicorns and cupcakes, right? I mean, there's hard stuff right now. There's hard stuff right now. And so when there's uncertainty and conflict, we can count on these whole person relationships that we've been building. So that leads us to healthy behavior number 4. One of the most complicated concepts is, what does help mean? What actually is going to be helpful? It's a complex phenomenon. So the idea of co-creating help places the person or the group that's receiving the help at the center of the helping relationship. I'm not here, I'm here to help you, blah, 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 right? That's putting myself at the center of the helping relationship, rather putting the other, the person receiving the help, at the center of the relationship, which is going to require my mouth to be closed, my ears to be open. And if I'm going to say anything, it's probably going to be a question. Tell me more about what the challenge is. So if you got through the needle, what would be possible? What do you think is the best way of getting through the needle? What can I do to help you get through the needle? Now I'm actually putting them at the center of the helping relationship. So when we put the other person at the center of the helping relationship, there's a specific kind of listening that is just extremely valuable. And it's a fancy language. It's kind of, I kind of like it for its fanciness. It's this idea of architectural listening. So you see a drawing here with shapes and somebody pointing to like a curve. And the idea of architectural listening is understanding the helpee, the person being helped. What is it they're willing to do? Not just what they want to do. What is the step that they're willing to take? Oh, it's that step right there. Well, what might be the second step? Oh, that next step. I wonder who might help you with. I don't really need help with step 2, but I need help with step 3, because step 3 is blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, who's in the best position to give you help there? Oh, this person or that person. So part of architectural listening is being able to kind of lattice help, so that maybe one person isn't the only deliverer of help. It could be multiple people delivering help. And so what we're listening for is the helpee saying and kind of co-creating it, what we often use the language of of inspiring it, having the help come out of the helpee versus the help coming from the helper, and having them inspire it. The benefit here in a governance is that we're able to recognize that if we were the only ones always delivering help in this way, we can create a dependency. We might actually have resistance to the help we're wanting to provide because the help's not actually helpful. It's actually harming. And so, especially for those that are familiar with, well, I have content expertise in this or content expertise in that, it might not be the content expertise that the helpee is looking for. They might be just looking for a listening ear, somebody to empathize, somebody to help recognize the power imbalance in the room already in a boardroom. There's all kinds of power imbalances inside of a boardroom. And so when we create a more equitable environment where all voices are heard, now I can create a sustainable environment inside that boardroom. Before we break into our next breakout room, we just have a couple minutes. Is there any questions when you think about whole person to whole person relationships and comprehensive listening and co-creating help and architectural listening? Is there a question or a perspective that you'd like to share?
I have a question.
Yeah.
As in various approaches, when one is learning or practicing an approach and the other person is not aware of it and
Mm,
or is what feels like and might seem like on the opposite side of such approach, whether it's actually in this behavior or in our actual breakout group, we also mentioned some other behaviors, even the humble the humble listening. How would you, yeah, how do you suggest to even start as opposed to get frustrated very quickly?
ah, um, one of the things that could be helpful, Tatiana, because you immediately, and my understanding is, hey, there's this person who kind of knows how to do it, and there's this other person that doesn't. Right? Am I kind of capturing that somebody that's used to doing something and somebody that's not? So as I was listening to you, I got this sense of level, right? One of the things when we co-create help, we want to level it. We want to create a more equitable space. Because if I'm up here and you're down here, I'm going to be kind of looking down, and you're going to be looking up, and well, he's the person that knows, and she doesn't, or he doesn't, and she does. So how do we create a more level relationship so that one up and one down doesn't exist? So even in the posture, even lowering yourself physically. If you were standing, let's sit. Um, if you're the one presenting, maybe bend down on a knee, right? That kind of thing to physically lower yourself to the other person. Fantastic thought, especially when it comes to help. Yeah. All right, so let's break into our breakout rooms, and we'll come back in about. Let's check our time here. We're right on time. Fantastic. So let's give ourselves 10 minutes in the breakout room to be thinking about these behavior 3 and behavior 4. You guys are awesome. You people are awesome. It's so cool. Like we're like trying to get in one more phrase into the breakout room. It's so awesome. So let's just take a couple minutes. We got some time for any kind of group reflection that you want to bring from your breakout into the whole space here. Is there something you want to share?
I can share. I think a question for me across both conversations has been around this like inherited structure that we have in most nonprofits where there's a board and a staff
Yeah.
and there's a power dynamic to it, right? And we, I think, spend a lot of like for people who long to embody a culture that is inclusive and relational and humble and all the good things, we put a lot of energy into like working against that and trying to undo the things that come at us as a result of that structure and the power dynamic that it creates. Um, and so, yeah, it makes me curious about like how do we develop not just a vision for doing things differently, but the actual like structures and scaffolding and practices that help us embody doing something different. Because we like we're so it's so ingrained that like this is how you run a nonprofit, right? We need like training wheels
Right.
as staff and boards who
Yeah.
want to collectively do something different.
The word you started with, inherited, I think captured a lot of what you're saying, which is And so many times, one of the things I really appreciate about this model is that it's like at the center isn't the technical expertise. It's not I'm a lawyer, it's not I'm an accountant, it's not this, it's not that. It's these basic human skills of that like are other things, right? They're not what we learned. And so your idea of like, hey, if we threw it out and started fresh, what would that look like? What would the training wheels be? What of this can we grab and take with us? Kirsten, it's fantastic, fantastic thought. Um, fantastic thought. Um, you guys are people are just doing fabulous. Let's go towards healthy behavior 5 and 6. So this whole idea of being able to being willing to learn together pushes back, Kristen, actually what you were talking about. Hey, if we didn't pay attention to the like this Robert's Rules of Order stuff, or this way of doing it, or that the agenda has to be built this way, what would it look like if we could learn together? Um, and so is there a training we might want to do together? Is there something that we might want to do that could help us build this sense of openness and trust? Equipping ourselves to shape the systems and structures that we operate. Because often when you think about system and structure, we're bound by them, but we also have agency over them. There is no higher level authority than what's happening in the boardroom, right? You are it. So you have agency over these systems and structures, but you're also to a certain extent bound by them, which means adaptive listening is going to be helpful. So adaptive listening is all about recognizing. Now, let's see. Now, Kirsten used this language, and I wonder what step she might be willing to take if she wanted to go in that direction. What's the adaptive move at the next board meeting we're wanting to take that's actually going to help us learn? So adaptive listening listens for intent, also listens for the pressure to keep things the same. Adaptive listening looks for roadblocks. Oh my gosh, well, it's not a balanced budget again. Well, then we're going to be like blocked for all kinds of new stuff for the next 12 months. I wonder if we better get at that right now. So adaptive listening is going to promote innovation. It's going to push back against the systems that exist that are unhelpful, and it's going to allow collaboration and innovation to take place. So the benefit for governance here then is being able to handle complexity with frameworks that support board members at varying levels of human development. So we're all at a different level of human development. You could think of any kind of human development. The one that kind of comes to my mind is Bob Keegan's, whether I have a socialized mind, I have a self-authoring mind, or I have a self-transforming mind. So wherever we're at in whatever level of human development, we're always able to learn and always able to grow. So we want to focus on and recognize that in the boardroom, we're not all at the same level of development. And adaptive listening and learning together allows us to have shared experience that can propel all of us. And then the final behavior here uh, is a board's ability to evolve culture. Now, culture, as defined by Peter Schein or Ed Schein, is this idea of accumulated shared learning. Well, we've kind of done it this way ever since, we were started here at the Hermitage and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And this is kind of the way we do things. But that comes from accumulated shared learning over time. And that builds and shapes our culture. Now, to push back against that, to evolve culture, we have to recognize our ability to actually change our behavior. Well, if we didn't want to do it in that way, then what might we want to do differently? So we want to look at how do we shape culture by the aspirational values that we articulate, by recognizing the underlying assumptions that we have here. And well, maybe some of those underlying assumptions need to change because they're not helping us anymore. They were great in 1920, but in 2026, not so much. So our ability to actually evolve culture versus strategy and tactics and blah, blah, blah can be helpful as we seek to transform because we know culture is going to eat strategy for breakfast. So we really, as a board, want to be thinking about evolving culture. And here, contextual listening is paramount. Often in the breakout rooms thus far, maybe this was true for you, is the difference between where staff are at and where the board's at. When I contextually listen to somebody, I'm listening for their patterns. I'm listening for their specific context. Not the board has this context, but this person on the board has this context. That person on the board has that context because my context is going to be different than Suzanne's, it's going to be different than Cheryl Lynn's, and I want to understand their context because then I'm able to see them for all of who they are. And their context is super helpful to me because, wow, now I get why that part of our board meeting just infuriates you. I would have never known that if I hadn't understood your context, which is then helpful in helping leadership create intentions and influence behavior happening in the boardroom. And that's why this is paired, contextual listening is paired with evolving culture, because I need to understand the context of the other person in order to begin thinking about shaping culture as we move forward. We're right about at our time for the next for breakout number 3. We won't have quite as much time in breakout number 3, maybe about 5-6 minutes. But is there any question before we go into breakout number 3? I realize that this is a lot coming at you, 6 healthy behaviors, 6 different forms of listening, and you all are paying so much attention, and I'm deeply grateful for that. So thank you. So Pamela, maybe 6 minutes when we get into rooms. Thanks. Oh, it's so great to hear your stories. It's so wonderful. Sorry, Becky, you weren't able to finish your thought there. So apologize for that. Before we go into this last little segment, which is going to tie these healthy behaviors into this concept of care for the whole, is there a question or a thought that that people have before we get into this last slide?
Just want to share the some of the wisdom from two of my breakout room folks. Sorry, Sarah Lynn, to step on your toes, but we talked a lot about the culture piece was really resonant, I think, for all three of us, and thinking about the boardroom and the staff and the organization. How do these things all speak to each other? How do you allow, like all of these places to be living, breathing things? How do you keep people connected? And how does the culture of the boardroom reflect the culture of the organization? How do these things not be disparate, separate things, but like particularly, we're all existing in this retreat space, but
Yeah.
how is that reflected in the work of the board? That it's not just, oh, this is another boardroom and it looks exactly like all the other boardrooms, but how is the culture of these board spaces connected to and reflective of the work of the organization? Sarah Lynn, do you want to share a little bit?
That was beautiful. Thank you. That definitely pulled all together what we talked about.
Well, they definitely are, right? Because every organization's culture has something called social culture, which is the way in which we socialize experience, to say it a different way, the culture. Now, a board is going to have its own culture because it's a group, it's a team. The leadership team is going to have its own culture. They may be similar, and I think you're correctly pointing out, Alexander and Sherilyn, they're going to impact each other. They're going to interface. They're going to cross over. And so how these cultures of these two different teams, if you think about it like a team, how do they play together? Because the CEO might do things over here the certain way. The board chair might do things a certain way if they're using that as a helpful framework. But they are going to interface. And that's where, Holly, your point was, hey, how do we understand those cultural differences? How do we even talk about that when we want to implement a strategy and we run smack dab into the culture of the company? How do we navigate that? This is fantastic, fantastic perspective, y'all. So thank you for that. So this last slide here is another image. And so this idea of care for the whole. Now, I don't need to tell a group of retreat center leaders the importance of cultural references that kind of underpin different ways of thinking, but they're not necessarily the ways we've all learned how to think. Bildung or Ubuntu. Ubuntu is one of my favorite kinds of ways of thinking about care for the whole, which is that kind of South African way of thinking of I am because we are, right? And so it recognizes that this board that I'm a part of, this organization that I'm a part of, is interconnected with something way much bigger. So how do I recognize that interconnectedness? So you see here in this image that this idea of caring for the whole is outside of the board. So sometimes we recognize that the board or the governors of the organization are kind of I just rewatched Endgame last night and Sorcerer Supreme, right? So this is the supreme governance of the organization. But actually, beyond the board are your constituency, the land that you're on, the river that runs through your property, the mountains that are there. If we care for the whole, the board has to be constantly going out. The organization has to constantly be going out. That's why these arrows are here. Hey, what do I need to be thinking about? What's the trend look like here at retreat centers globally? What's the trend happening in salaries? What's the trends happening in all these other areas? And then I bring back, that's the arrow coming in, I'm bringing back that learning so that so that my organization can benefit from it. So I'm balancing here what's happening inside as well as outside. I'm also recognizing what's happening underneath. What's happening in our current social context is having an impact. I better recognize that. I wonder if the staff here need a break. Maybe I need to come in and spend 2 weeks of my time and give them a way off if we can't afford it. So it recognizes the deeper, more interconnectedness that we have here as being a humble board. And so the benefits then, I'm listening again. I'm inquiring again. I'm evolving my culture yet again to create more adaptive, humane, and effective governance that recognizes there's something happening outside of the inside. And I want to honor and respect that and recognize that in order to sustain and be responsible, I have to understand what's happening outside. So that's kind of my brief introduction of this idea of care for the whole. And I think it's the last slide. So we can just rest here on this slide if you like, and just and maybe share some final reflections. I know that Michael wants maybe 3 or 5 minutes towards the end for some housekeeping items and want to respect the time of everybody. But what's coming up for you as you're kind of seeing this closing slide?
Can I say, um, I would say, like, I felt like I need 2 more hours to just like talk and sit with this information
Hmm.
just so that I could get to a place of also, again, the practice side of it all, because
Yeah.
it is, and that it's complex.
Yeah.
Um, and a very different way of what we've inherited or what we've been trained or how we think about it. And
Yeah.
so I'm very appreciative of
Mm.
all of it, and just like it's sitting with me very differently on how I want to, again, my reminder to show up a little bit differently and not lean into the same values or dominant ways of
Yeah.
doing things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Arlene, I really appreciate that reflection and hear from a fellow journey person. Hey, I'm still learning, even though I've written a lot of this, I'm still learning. Hey, what does this mean? How do I apply? Especially when I get triggered with stuff, right? I am like, and then all of a sudden my hearing shuts down and my emotion comes up and I do blah 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 blah, right? And it's so hard sometimes. So thank you for just honoring the journey you're on.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna rewrite. I had an email in draft. I was like, "Ooh, I'm not gonna send an email today. I think I need to sit a little bit with some questions before I send that email off today."
Ah, bless your heart. Bless your heart. That's awesome. Anyone else? Anyone else? Michael's got a copy of the PowerPoint and a PDF, and so that way he can send it out to you. And in there is my email and phone number, website, blah blah blah, all the fun stuff. So feel free, please give me a call. Happy to think with you about how this is landing and what piece of it could be helpful for you.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to you, Lon, for offering your time today to introduce to us the Humble Board and all the ways that it can support us. And it left me sort of thinking a lot about, organizations really need to figure out what kind of methodology they want to use and then let that be pervasive and let it be this continual practice. And it actually ties into Tatiana's leading a three-part series coming up this fall on onboarding with intention for staff. And it really made me think, oh, we need to do a three-part session on onboarding with intention with your board. You get a new board member and you throw them in and you hope that they'll catch up and, you get mad when they don't. So it's just like such an intentional process, and it's so actually so basic. You know what I mean? It's like we all have done parts of these things, but seeing it all together, I just think is so great. So I will talk and we'll see how we can continue to find ways to introduce this idea and concept to folks. I want to say thank you. And if you're not yet a member of the RCC, a paid member, or you got one a while ago and you're not sure if you've renewed it yet for this year, Pam and I would love to help you with that. Our membership helps these kind of calls happen, as well as many other pieces that RCC is offering. And there are two upcoming events that I just put into the chat. One of them is our fall retreat. I know some of you are signed up. Sarah Lynn just sent me a message saying, I'm signed up for the fall retreat. And I was like, yeah, we get to hang out October 6th to 9th. It's at Lindenwood, which is Arlene's retreat center. So we can't wait to be with you, Arlene. October 6th to 9th, we're going to have some really great content. And I just want to let you know that there's a little survey coming out in the next few days where we're inviting you to help us select kind of like what the major focus of the retreat will be. Will it be governance? Will it be programming? Will it be finance? Will it be just having fun together? We're going to hear from you, and that will help us choose a few key leaders going forward. So please fill that out. The other is Tatiana's Onboarding with Intention. It's a three-part paid uh, series where you will actually leave with some very tangible tools and tricks for doing this work based on your own center. So thank you for being here. This is our last call until September. We're just to give some space for folks. I know it's a busy season, but we're here. And if it's getting super busy and you just need someone to chat to, please call me. I'd love to you can vent to me anytime you want, or we can refer you to somebody else too. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
See you,
Thank
everybody.
you. Have a great summer, everyone.
You too.